1. Normally, bringing in a scooter would be a bit of a blessing for transportation for events like Coachella or Anime Expo, as it'll save time going to booths or food stalls. Me and a buddy brought some scooters along for fast transportation while at the venue, as an easier means of transportation, and to keep our feet from dying whilst there. The event I went to was an anime convention, particularly Anime Impulse in Anaheim, which was being held at an indoor venue close to Disneyland theme park. I did go to Anime Impulse the day before with said buddy, as we had bought 2-day tickets for the both of us, and we wanted to make the event worth our while. We did also bring scooters that day, but no one reported us to security, I think. Which brings us to today. Buddy and I went to the second day of Anime Impulse, today, to spend out the last day of our ticket there. The two of us had to leave late as we were busy doing housekeeping before leaving, so there were a few hours left before the event ended. Like yesterday, we brought in our scooters as we parked on the other side of the venue, a giant-ass parking lot across the street. So we brought along our scooters to make it easy for us to get there and spend the last remaining hours there. Both of us got in, waited in line, got our bags checked, and went inside. Both of us brought our scooters in as well, as we were paranoid of them being stolen at the venue. Why we didn't leave them with security, I don't know. So we got in. I take a look at some of the panels going on, and I stroll around on my scooter. The damn thing went real quick as I had recently lubricated the wheels and I was testing it out. I was also complimented on bringing these scooters with us, as they thought it was a good idea to bring them in as transport. For most of the event, I was scootering around to see what booths had piqued my interest, but not a lot of them had anything I was looking for. Fast forward an hour, and I was about to make another round on the scooter when I get tackled out of nowhere by one of the volunteers working there. Took me a bit to realize they were a volunteer, as they looked just like a regular congoer. What I think happened was that I accidentally buzzed several people with the scooter while trying to course correct, and someone called in security to put me and my buddy out. Now I'm being escorted out by said volunteer, and I talked to some of the security guards about the matters. They sorted out the issue with the scooters, and I got kicked out of the venue. My buddy was unaware that I got booted out, so I had to call him several times. Cell reception within the venue was ass, so I ended up just spam calling his phone until he picked up. Told him to meet me outside because I got booted, and he came out 15 minutes after I called him. We left the venue altogether after 5 minutes of just sitting outside. So yeah, maybe next time I go to anything indoors related, maybe I'll ask the guards to watch my shit. 2. So this started at around 10 a.m. I was walking outside to my car to take my wife to work, as we share a car. A guy walks up to me and starts saying he will rake my yard for some money. I told him no because we have someone that does it. I also said no because he was clearly tweaking on meth and I didn't want him in my yard. Well, he wasn't taking no for an answer, and he just started doing it anyways. I kept telling him to not do it, but I was in a rush as my wife was already running late. So I just handed him the cash from my center console and said try to be done quick. I was kinda hoping he'd just take the money and leave before I got back because I didn't want to have to deal with him. Well, when I come back from dropping her off, he's still there and now has a lawnmower. At this point, I'm just telling him to hurry up and go, but he's just rambling nonsense at 1,000 words a minute and picking individual grass blades out. So I decided to just go inside and make breakfast. When not even 5 minutes later, he's banging on my front door. I'm not an idiot, so I didn't answer it, because I'm sure he would have tried to come inside, and instead I called my uncle and he came over and basically told the guy to leave in 30 minutes or he's calling the cops. The guy freaked out a bit, then proceeded to start calling my Uncle Joe Biden, screaming, "I can't believe a black man like me is cutting grass for the president." He then starts up his mower and starts cutting the grass after we told him to just leave. At this point, I'm starting to consider bringing my own gun out to be more convincing, but I had a feeling he was from the meth house. It's like 5 houses down from me, and didn't want to bring more trouble. In the end, it took him like 4 hours, and he kept begging for more money. I guess the meth has long since wore off at this point because he looked like he was about to die on my sidewalk. So I gave him a water bottle and told him the person across the street probably needs their yard done. It's an abandoned house. I went to Walmart several hours later and saw him raking the sidewalk in front of the abandoned house. This is kind of the short version. I did end up giving him another $5, but I told him from the start I don't really carry cash, which is true. Also, if you're wondering why we didn't just actually call the cops, I kinda live hood adjacent, and that's really frowned on around here. 3. Earlier this month, I, a 50-year-old man, took my daughter, 20 years old, on a snowboarding trip to Utah. We rented a car and drove up to the mountain, Brighton, for our first day. A Friday. We had a great day. I had a new jacket that had 3 pockets, a left side, right side, and a vertical on the chest. On day 1, I had the keys and my credit card and ID in the left side pocket, which had a zipper and Velcro. For whatever reason, I was nervous the whole day about the keys and completely relieved at the end of the day, when they were still in my pocket when we left. I don't know why I had so much anxiety about it. Saturday, day 2. I decided to put the keys in the vertical chest pocket, figuring I would never open that pocket. Late in the day, I went to the lodge and bought a couple of beers. I had my ID and credit card out, and for some stupid reason, after the purchase, I put the ID, credit card, and one of the 2 beers in the vertical chest pocket. We pounded the beers on the lift and proceeded to board for another couple of runs, including a few yard sale-like falls and cartwheels. We decided to wrap it up around 2 p.m. and head to the car. As we get to it, the zipper is already open on the vertical chest pocket, and to my horror, no keys to the rental car. No sugarcoating it, we were fucked. I told my daughter as much and prepared her for the next several hours sucking. I gave a quick check, with lost and found to no avail. My wallet was still in the car with cash and other cards. The parking lot crew did their best to try to break in, to at least get that and our change of clothes, but to no avail. At this point, I decided it'd be best to Uber back to the hotel and regroup. I thought I'd just go back to the airport and get a spare key and be on my way. It does not work that way. There is virtually no way to reach the airport rental counter on the phone, and it was too big of a gamble to just show up hoping they had a spare. I later found out they don't have spares. We get back, I call the $1 rental car roadside assistance line, and they're super positive. We've dispatched a locksmith and a tow truck. ETA is 45 minutes. Oh shit. So I leave my daughter and Uber back up the mountain, about 45 minutes away. Steve, the Uber driver, picked me up and off I went. More on Steve later, he deserves his own paragraph. I get back to the resort, check lost and found again to no avail, and wait. Only for nothing to happen. There is snow on the roads and the locksmith won't be able to make it up today. Remember, this was Saturday. Initially, they quoted me $300 for the tow and $80 for the locksmith. But now neither is responding and it's getting late, 7 p.m. I decided to cut my losses for the night, as it's unlikely anyone is coming up the mountain for this service. Let's talk about Salt Lake City Uber legend Steve. On the ride up, I explained to him what I was dealing with, and before he dropped me off, he tells me, "Here's my personal number. If your tow truck doesn't work out and it gets late, there won't be any Ubers to get you. Nobody will come up for that ride. But call me and I'll come get you." Thankfully, I took him up on that, because sure as shit, after I realized roadside assistance wasn't coming tonight, and tried to get a regular Uber back, no takers. I called him, and he came right back for me. He saved my ass from hitchhiking down the mountain, still wearing snowboard gear. The sweetest dude as well, recovering cancer survivor, and I hope the best for him and his family. The next morning, I got a phone call early and got roadside assistance going. This time, albeit expensive, I got a great tow operator. And I hate tow companies with a passion. I'm talking the ones that tow you for illegal parking, etc. Kelly picked me up from the hotel in his personal vehicle and drove me up to the mountain and to my rental car. He used his lockout kit and got it open so that I could get my wallet and the rest of our clothes and gear, then drove me back to the hotel and waited half an hour for me to pack up and check out. Drove us to the airport for our 2 p.m. flight. Later, this tow truck guy went back up to the mountain and picked up the vehicle and attempted to deliver it to the rental car place, but they were closed. They eventually dropped it off Monday morning and it all worked out. So you're probably wondering, what did that all cost, not including the Ubers? Here is what my TFIU cost. Lockout, $80. Tow, $505. Lost key, $250. Airport closed, overnight storage, $40. Tow back to the airport on Monday, $125. Admin fee, $35. Grand total, $1,035. The fucking rental for the 3 days was $122. Had I had AAA, it would have been a little cheaper, but not much. And I'm still fighting dollar because I was billed twice for the $250 lost key charge. Moral of the story, do not ever lose your fucking rental car keys. 4. About 10 years ago, I was a senior in college and had a mandatory class on medieval literature. It was part of my major and I had to take it to graduate. King Arthur, tales of whatever. It just so happened that the professor of this class was very well known and there was a body of students who attended my college to study with her. I had heard positive things, so I went into the class thinking it would be fun. Turns out these people are in a cult. Everyone seemed to have a background on lineages and English history except for me. So much context I could not get a grasp on. These books are thick and old English and frankly boring. Other students and the professor practically role-played the class. I was doing well enough, participating every class and reading the nonsense. But then we had a group project. We had to each select a theme from the same book and present the themes in a group presentation. It required checking out several books from the library to show historical backgrounds on our themes. I will refer to my partners as Agatha and Bethany. We met briefly after class to talk game plan, our general themes that we'd cover and what next. Agatha decided we should meet the next week before our due date in a very specific room of the library, because it's where she studies most. There were 2 libraries on campus. They would get books from the library they like, and I would check out a list of books in the library I'm familiar with. Then we'd go over sources together. The day came, and I was in a massive rush. I finished rowing practice in the morning, went to find the books, and realized there were massive hardcover books. I had to stack them and carry, they wouldn't fit in my backpack. I had a class to get to. I got a text from the group project chat as I was rushing to class. They wanted the books I had ASAP because the ones they found were not helpful. And here's where I fucked up. I went to answer the text that I have the books and tripped down a set of stairs. I didn't catch myself and landed on my ankle. It was so embarrassing. Everyone saw I fell while looking at my phone. No one helped. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. I was hunched over in the hallway with people walking around me, books everywhere, and couldn't support my right ankle. Luckily, I was very close to the campus's urgent care. I managed to limp there with the books and was very out of sorts. I missed my class and waited for help. They told me my ankle is at least sprained and I have to go to the local hospital. At this point, I messaged the group. Yes, I have the books. I tripped carrying them. I have to go to the hospital. I will do my best to be at the meeting room later that day. They were somehow pissed at me, especially Agatha. She wanted me to get the books to one of them sooner so that they could work on the project before we met up. As in, they were both done classes and twiddling their fingers in anticipation of English history barf. I couldn't do it, and no one would come to me. Great. Keep in mind, we're still a week away from the due date. I managed to find a ride to the hospital from a team member. I was really thankful. She really helped me out and waited with me while I was seen. She reassured me the project will be fine, just get taken care of. The hospital did an x-ray, wrapped it, added this blue and white soul thing for support, and gave me crutches, and said don't walk on it for a few weeks. So I finally get back to my place, and it's past the meeting time. Meeting time was 5 p.m. Now it's 7 p.m. The group chat is pissed at me. I say I just got back from the hospital. I am on crutches, and it's hard to get to them. They say,
"You agreed to this, so get here."
I'm like, shit, fine. I fit the books into a backpack and make my way there. A random school bus stopped for me and opened the door to offer a ride, but I was heading into campus where cars can't drive. I looked really pathetic and had not adjusted the crutches enough to fit my height. After a serious slog, I get to the library, the one furthest from me. These assholes picked a room at the top floor, stair access only. I finally make it out and I'm out of breath. I crutch into the room. They were scowling at me in silence, like I interrupted a conversation with my heavy breathing. I empty the books on the table. They flip through them and don't talk to me. I felt so out of place and couldn't focus. I got the feeling they sat there waiting for me and talked about how I'm either lazy or a liar. Agatha said she couldn't stay anymore, took a few of the books and left abruptly. Bethany immediately got awkward and said she had to go too, took the rest of the books, leaving me there to wait until I was ready for the stairs and the slog back home. The weekend goes by, and I manage to meet up with Bethany to get back the book I needed most. Important note. I picked out this book specifically for my slides, and Agatha took this book when we met up. I have my slides done that night. I send them to Agatha to combine them. Didn't see their slides. Fuck up number 2. And we present the following class day. The classroom is also upstairs. I arrive in the door late, obvious struggling. The professor doesn't even check with me, like she didn't notice I'm on crutches. I immediately got the feeling Agatha and Bethany complained about my part of the project. They were sitting closest to her, big circle room like King Arthur shits. Another group goes first. We go to present. As we present, my slides are last. And then as I'm watching my group, the girl before me, Agatha, is using my research on her slides, I was in shock. What in hell is happening? Her entire time was no longer what we agreed to. It was mine about pregnancy. Very specific. I had referenced certain scenes of the book. She used the same scenes. I referenced certain chapters of the research book I found. She used the same exact sources. It was my turn. I gave her a look and she didn't meet my eyes. My slides mimic hers. I present them as I planned. It's obvious what this looks like. Everyone is eye-rolling. No one cut me off. Then we're done. I don't remember our grade. I do remember the professor sending me an email that she expected better of me. The other girls, they outwardly scowled at me and clearly spread rumors. No one in the class said a word to me after this presentation. Bethany was the only one that I was remotely friends with from sharing other classes together, and she stopped texting me back and blocked me on social media. I got a C in that class. Fuck those bitches, fuck medieval literature. I graduated weeks later and was out of the crutches just in time to walk and never look back. Bethany, fuck you the most. I thought we were friends, you heartless backstabber. Ever since then, every single time I walk downstairs, I watch my feet. 5. Obligatory, this did not happen today. No. This happened about 4 years ago when I was in university. It was a blustery Saturday afternoon in late November. I loved these blustery, gray, damp later autumn Saturday afternoons. I loved the way clouds softened the light. I loved the feeling of crisp and cool tranquility that seemed to just seep under the skin like a soft, familiar touch. I loved the way everything seemed to just slow down. I was driving home from the gym around 4:30, looking forward to a peaceful evening ahead. At this point in time, I was working an office job part-time, so I had my weekends all to myself. And since it was Saturday, the house would be empty when I got home from the gym. My brother works in a bar, and his work week is essentially Thursday to Sunday. My dad often went out and puttered around town, and made his way to his favorite little watering hole out in the West End. And my mom was often off doing whatever it was she was doing on Saturday evenings in 2015. Exams were right around the corner, and the exam closest was for a class that was particularly challenging. History or something. I can't really remember, so I had important, rigorous studying that needed to get done. But at least I knew I could do my studying in peace and not be disturbed. My favorite routine was to stop at the Starbucks down the street from my house and grab a white mocha or peppermint mocha when it was closer to Christmas, and when home, sit in the living room with the lights slightly dimmed and put on the CBC or some relaxing music. I'd sit on the couch in the living room under some dim lights, curled up by the gentle glow of my laptop in front of our big front windows. And then for dinner, I'd either pop out for some Chinese takeaway or heat up a frozen pizza. The perfect Saturday. So first stop on the way home was Starbucks. I pulled up in the tiny parking space down the back. It really only fit about 2 or 3 cars safely, and wasn't really a parking lot any more than it was a paved, extended bit of the sidewalk to which it was adjoined. Sometimes, because I live in a waspy area for which Starbucks is the lifeblood, people get desperate and will double park you in that lot with their big fuck-off pickup trucks or vans or SUVs. Luckily, when I arrived, there is a spot. I think there was maybe 1 other car there. Outstanding. So then I park and shut off the car. I was about to leave the car when I thought, I should open my bank app and make sure I have the money I think I have in my account. I was a broke-ass student. Y'all know how it is. So I set my keys down as I fish my phone out of my overly long coat. I check my app, see that I'm all good for a grande white mocha, and maybe some lo mein noodles later, and cheerily hop out of the car. I tuck myself into the tall collar of my coat against the wind, so cold it seemed to freeze into the shards of ice that buffeted my face. I slip my hands into my pocket as I walk to keep them warm. And that's when I felt something far colder than the sharp-toothed gales that whispered the wrath of the coming winter. It was pure dread, the kind that hurls your stomach into free fall, like going over that first hill on a roller coaster, but without any of the fun. I'm sure you're catching my mistake in this moment as I was. I ran back to the car in a flash and pressed my face to the driver's side window. Sure enough, on the front seat are my fucking car keys. Soundly locked inside. I groaned a deep groan, like my soul was a punctured birthday balloon, and this groan was the noise it made as air spewed from it. After a moment of panic, I got my head straight and started making phone calls. First, I called my brother. Though at work, the place he worked at was maybe a 20-minute walk from where I was. I figured I could get a hold of him, tell him I'm coming down, grab his house keys, get inside, grab my dad's car keys he always left in the kitchen, and get back to the car. Easy peasy. So I call him, but no answer. Now, in hindsight, given my brother's work was well within walking distance, I don't know why I didn't just walk down anyways, but I guess my thinking was that he was probably super busy with the Saturday night rush, and I didn't want to bother him. I used to work there, though, for like 3 years, and would go back for another 2 the following year, so it would have been no problem for me to just walk in, slip behind the bar, and grab the keys from his coat. But again, staff might have been busy, and I didn't want to be in their way. Also, what coat my brother might have been wearing, he had a few, that would be hung up amongst all the similar-looking coats of his co-workers. All that kind of stuff. For some reason, I needed my brother to answer the phone before I could just head down, so next call. Next call was my mom. There were times when she was home on a Saturday, and so I called, hoping this was one of those times. It was not, as I got her voicemail. Call 3. My dad. While he was all the way out in the opposite end of town, I could at least hop on the transit, grab his house keys from him, shoot back home, get his car keys from the kitchen, dart back down the street to the Starbucks to the car. Easy peasy. Voicemail. Well, fuck. So, feeling defeated, I figure, well, I'm already here at Starbucks. Might as well go see about that mocha I came here for. I'd go in, get some shelter from the frosty afternoon, sit down and come up with a new plan. Well, when I got inside, got my drink and a seat, the best thing I could come up with was Googling ways to safely break into my car. My car was from 2000, so no fancy alarms to be triggered or anything like that. However, all the articles said I needed a coat hanger or something. And all coat hangers are in my house, of course. And I needed keys to get into my house, and we're back at square one. It is at this time my dad calls me back. I am too relieved at this point, finally about to catch a break, to be embarrassed, so I just straight up tell him what's happening and brace a bit for some kind of lecture or disdain. But none of that. He didn't seem bothered at all for whatever reason. Hey, not complaining about that. He says come on by and grab the keys, that he's at his regular spot. I tell him perfect, I'll be there in 45 minutes. I dart out of Starbucks, across the street to the bus stop. The wind has only gotten stronger, and the evening is only getting colder as the sun begins to set. It's well below zero, and I'm freezing my nips off in the bus shelter waiting on this chariot to salvation. It is the longest 5 or so minutes of my life. I'm hopping around, pacing, cursing in this bus shelter that does nothing against the wind or freezing rain. The pellets are blown into the ground, the plexiglass enclosure that's little more than a bathroom stall without a toilet. So my skin, raw from the blowing cold, is getting nicely chewed up. I'm cold, a bit damp from the rain, and my face now hurts like a motherfucker. Well, finally the bus arrives, and I hurry out of the shelter to the edge of the sidewalk, an elderly woman having appeared next to me. The bus stops and the doors open, and I let her go first as I fish out my Metro Pass. And once again, dread, colder than a capitalist's heart in this increasingly miserable afternoon, sets in. The only reason I had the car to drive to the gym was because a deal my dad and I had made. I get the car on Saturday afternoons to go to the gym, and in exchange, Dad gets my Metro Pass to putter around town to his favorite watering hole. Fuck. Well, being used to having cash from tips from when I worked at that bar just a few months prior, I perennially had change in my pocket, so I thought no big deal. I'm sure I've got $3. My pockets were bone dry. So I watch haplessly as the old woman gets on. The bus driver looks at me to see if I'll be boarding too, but I have no choice to pathetically shake my head. He closes the door, and I watch the bus lumber off, my hopes and dreams dragged behind it like tin cans on strings. Plan B. I'm a car share member. And like a 5-minute walk west down the road, there's a vehicle location. I open up my app to see if maybe I can just easily get a car and go, and my whole ordeal will be easier and maybe even less time. But the only car is booked. There's another location about a 20-minute walk away, which at this point beggars can't be choosers. No cars available. Plan C. I call an Uber. The only plan that actually works. I sit in the bus shelter and let the ice pellets peel away my skin insanity for another 5 minutes, in full view of my car in which I stupidly locked my keys, feeling somehow mocked by this because a 90-degree turn of my head would have saved me all this pain and anguish and embarrassment, and I could just be home right now peacefully studying, having the Saturday I intended. But I digress. The Uber arrives, a Toyota Corolla. He's this chill dude, really nice, and for the life of me I wish I could remember his name, but since I can't, and this is a Canadian tale, we'll call him Buddy. Buddy was a young dude, probably not much older than me. He was either Latin or Middle Eastern, but I can't remember which. He was a fairly average build with a buzz cut and a face that was always contentedly chill. He had seen it all, and was confident there was nothing more to see. I hop in and we take off west. I think he asked me if I'm out to party, to which I reply no, I locked my keys in my car, and now I need to get across town to get keys from my dad, and fill him in on the plan of get the house keys, get to the house, get the car keys from the kitchen, yada yada yada. We have a good laugh about this, and we start talking about all the cars that have the function where it can detect if you've left your keys in the car and thus won't lock. He tells me he's left his keys in the car many a time before, and he doesn't know how he lived before that feature. which his current car has, and he tells me how long the tech has been around for. It's been around for longer than I thought. It's 10 minutes after getting in this Uber. My brother finally calls me back. He asks what's going on, and I tell him I locked my keys in the car and needed his keys. So come get him, he says. I can't. I'm already in an Uber to go meet Dad for his keys. I say, oh damn, he says. Okay, see ya. I hung up and cursed the heavens that shit ice upon me this day. Buddy and I continue chatting the rest of the way and really hit it off. We're halfway between acquaintances and occasional friend you see once or twice a year at a house party. He tells me when we get near the bar to just request an additional stop and he'll take me back across town. I realized I hadn't even contemplated getting back at that point, so I was even more grateful now we were partnering up on this quest. We get to the bar, he gets the car turned around, while I run across the street to the bar. I get inside and the place is smaller than I imagined. There's a seating area immediately in front of a large bay window, and then there's a few steps up to the bar area where most of the regulars sat. My dad and the other 4 or 5 regulars were the only people in the tiny place, about the size of a living room. The place was warm and cozy. It was Saturday evening in November, perfectly encapsulated in the quiet lightning and the soft chatter of people with nowhere else they need to be. Behind the bar were 2 TVs, one playing a hockey game and the other news, both on mute. My dad turned around in his seat as I approached and greeted me cheerfully. "Hey, OP, how you doing?" he says. I look and see the rest of the bar is also looking at me. The sudden strange man my dad seems to know. "Hi, Dad. You have the keys?" I say quickly, but as politely as I can so as not to seem pushy. "Oh, right," he says. I think he's a few beers in at this point. As he fishes his keys out, he looks around, and it dawns on him, this strange man, to others, who's come out of nowhere, he's so happy to see must be introduced. "Everyone, this is my son, OP. He then proceeds to fire off the name of each person around the bar. I politely smile with a small wave, and then my dad finally goes to hand me his keys. Then he pauses. "Oh, shoot, wait, I don't have my car keys," he says, deeply disappointed. "I always leave them at home when I go out because I never think I'm going to need them." "No, Dad, it's okay. Are those your house keys?" "Yes." "That's cool. I just need to get into the house to get your car keys." "Oh, okay," he says, thrilled with my plan. "Do you know where they are?" "Yeah, they're in the kitchen on the corner cabinet, next to the stairs." "Yeah, Dad, I know." I take the keys graciously with a grateful smile. "Thank you." I turn to leave. "Wait." I stop and whirl around. "Do you want to stay for something to eat?" he says, then fumbles for a menu on the bar as he hurriedly asks the bartender if the kitchen is still open. "No, Dad, it's fine," I say. "I got an Uber waiting for me outside. I gotta go." "Oh, okay. I'll see you at home." I hurry back outside and find Buddy parked in an alley next to the bar. Comfortable enough with our relationship, I decided to take the risk and hop in the front seat. We make the drive back the way we came, and on the way I discover a cool-looking coffee shop that has become a nice little writing nook as we pass through the neighborhood. We talk some more about whatever, just shooting the shit. He tells me about his friend who is a truck driver and how much money he's making. He tells me he plans on getting into the business, and I think he was in the process of getting his trucking license. He then asks me if I think my car will be okay, it having been there all this time. He's worried it could get towed. I hadn't thought of that. I was mainly worried about someone maybe breaking in, the keys being in full view on the seat. Never once had I thought of the more realistic threat of someone calling the city or a tow company to have my car removed, the car having been left in this tiny parking space with limited spots, but great demand for what seemed like hours. In reality, it had maybe been an hour by now. But it feels a bit bad bringing that up and tries to reassure me it'll be fine. And I try to just keep the conversation going on something else to get my mind off that horrifying thought. I bring up the fact I was supposed to be studying tonight for an exam the coming week, one I really needed to be studying for. But after the events of this evening, that likely wasn't going to be happening anymore. One crisis at a time. We pull up at my house, and I prepare to say goodbye to the Alfred to my Batman. But before I can say anything, Buddy goes, "I'll wait right here." I was like, "Dude, no, you've been so helpful, thank you, but I can handle it from here." Buddy goes, "Nah, man, it's cool. It's just down the street." In hindsight, he was also getting paid for this whole trip, but regardless, he was great, and I was enjoying his company on this journey. "I'll be back in 30 seconds, I say, and eagerly run up to the house. I run up to the house and slip the key in the lock and turn. But it won't turn. There's no more the lock needs to turn. The house is fucking unlocked. Someone is home. Someone has been home this whole time. Someone has been home, had ample time to mess around on their phone and see my call, and never returned my call, or texted me back, or anything. To be honest, I don't know who I was more pissed at. Whoever was home right now, or me, for not having walked the 10 minutes up the street from Starbucks in the first place to see if anyone was home. I slipped inside, making a mental note not to tell Buddy about this, and hurried to the kitchen to get my dad's car keys. "Hello," my mom calls from the basement den. The stairs to the basement were an open stairwell next to the kitchen, so it's easy to hear people come and go from down there. "Hi," I say as I grab the keys. "I'm just heading back out briefly. I'll be back soon." "Okay," she says. I scurry back to Buddy's car and hop in, on our way to the final objective. The road to Starbucks was on a decline, and Starbucks was hidden just around a bend behind some houses and trees. It's a very short, obtuse bend, but in this moment, waiting for the moment it would be revealed to me whether my car had been towed or was spared, it was the longest bend in the world. It may as well have been a hairpin on the Nürburgring or something. We get in line of sight of Starbucks, and I can't see my car. I see an SUV and a minivan, but I can't see my car. We get a little closer, pulling up to the intersection. The Starbucks was on, and now I can see my car. I couldn't see it originally because the minivan had double parked me. My face lights up as I jovially scream, "It's there! We did it! We did it, Buddy!" Buddy was pleased, but then grimaced a bit seeing the minivan. "But you can't get out," he says. "True," I say, "but the car is there. Probably someone in Starbucks, but the car's there, and I can work with that." Buddy smiled, satisfied with this happy ending. He dropped me off by my car. I thanked him profusely, and we wished each other well. I hopped out, and Buddy drove off back into the world from which he came. Side objective: find the owner of this Ford Arrow that's double parked me. Christ, it's been a while since I've seen a Ford Arrow. For those who don't know, it's a minivan from the 90s or late 80s. Look them up. They're charmingly horrid for their time. I go inside the Starbucks and head straight for the counter. The place is quieted down. It's quite dead. There's an old couple who have just been served their drinks, and there's one or two other solo people engrossed in laptops. The two people on shift are getting ready to close up soon. The old couple had just finished ranting to the staff about how people keep leaving their cars in the parking space behind the store, taking away space from Starbucks patrons, or something like that. One of the staff sees me come in and posts up at the cash ready to take an order. "Hi, do you know if anyone in here drives a Ford Arrow?" She frowns, puzzled, shakes her head. "Anyone drive a Ford in here?" She calls out to the all four guests.
"I do,"
a frumpy old man, one half of the old couple, says. "Of course you do," I mentally grumble. "Ford van?" I say.
"Yep."
"Okay, well, I'm double parked."
"How long you gonna be?"
"No, I need to get my car out." The man gives me a look like I'm wasting his time.
"Okay, what's the problem?"
"I'm double parked. I need you to move your van," I say, my patience rapidly being exhausted.
"Just park somewhere else,"
the man says. "No, I try to stammer out some response, but I'm barely coherent. I'm so exhausted from my what proved to be pointless trek back and forth across town. Now I am shocked at this man who can't just move his fucking van for me so this can all be over. This is when his wife steps in, thank God.
"No, wait," she says. "I think what he's trying to say is that we double parked him."
I sigh the greatest sigh I've ever sighed. A sigh whose draught carried away all the weight I had been carrying for the past very long hour and a half. This woman has no idea the heroic act she has just done. It dawns on the husband that I was trying to say, and he softens up.
Sure, pal. No problem.
We go outside to our cars, they hop in their van, and I slip my key into my car's lock, which I swear up and down in that moment felt better than sex. I hopped in, put my dad's key in my coat pocket, mine in the ignition, and started up the car. The man backed his van out of the lot, and I backed out after him, and I drove home. It was maybe 45 minutes after I got home that my dad got in. He asked me about how the rest of my night went, and I recounted it all to him. Boy, did we laugh. My mom, overhearing everything from the basement, came and joined us, and wasn't as amused by my ordeal, but it all got solved, so what was she gonna do? And no, I didn't end up studying. There was no CBC playing in the living room. There was no low lights and the glow of a laptop screen as I curled up on the couch in front of the window. But there was still the white mocha helping to keep me sane through the whole trip. And my dad threw a pizza in the oven for me after I had told my grand tale. I think the rest of the night was just watching a movie and playing PlayStation until bed. The Uber trip, all told, was about $55, and as far as I can remember, I pulled off at least a B on the exam. So, moral of the story, if you're gonna have a car, make sure it's one from this era. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Embarrassing Stories, episode 101. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like to send in, you can send that along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. And if you'd like early access to these videos, no problem. You can get that by signing up for my Patreon, which is linked in the description. Support me there for as little as $1 or more if you would like to per month. You get them on Monday or Tuesday at the very latest. You'll also find a link in the description to the merchandise store on Teespring. And if you really liked today's video, you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath the video and select the tip of your choice. Not required, but it is appreciated. Right, I don't think we've any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question, kind of sort of following on from the end of the last story there about modern cars. How do you feel about self-driving cars? I've been watching lots of videos on them, and while the technology is not perfect yet, the company Waymo has been testing robo-taxis, self-driving cars, in, I believe, San Francisco, Phoenix, and part of Los Angeles, I believe. And as I say, they're not perfect, they will occasionally get stuck, but that is kind of the idea of doing a small test to kind of work out the kinks in the software. But it seems to do the job, it seems relatively reliable, and personally speaking, I'm very, very eager for a world in which we have self-driving cars. A car that's so advanced you don't even need a steering wheel, and there's already sort of developing those. And I can see the day probably sooner than we think when we have access to those. Not that I think it should ever be mandatory, but it would be nice for those of us who want them, who have them. And I can actually imagine, I've heard some people say, oh, well, it'll just mean more cars on the roads. It might do, but I think it means better traffic flow overall. If more people are using self-driving, the traffic flow is going to be smoother. That's my opinion, of course. And imagine you're a taxi driver, you buy a self-driving vehicle, you lease it out to the cab company you were working for anyway, you got the money coming in from that, and you can either relax at home or take another part-time job and end up even making even more income. Of course, that's the idealized version. I'm sure there's going to be a bit of struggle and hiccups along the way as we get there, but I think we will get there. So why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Embarrassing Stories 97. I somehow skipped 98. It goes 97, 99, 100. There's an embarrassing story for you. Don't know where it went, I just didn't make it. Only just noticed that. Anyway, this comes from Embarrassing Stories 97, and it was a Christmas-themed one. It's what Christmas food sells really, really well that's popular, you just don't like. And today's answer comes from Puppy Lover. The standard hated Christmas food, fruitcake. I like fruit. I like cake. I like cake with fruit on it or in it, but something about fruit cake. Just no. Bad texture, bad flavor, just bad. And I agree, as I believe I said in that video. Just not something I've ever enjoyed. Give me a nice chocolate cake, or a nice chocolate fudge cake. Nom 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 nom. Thank you very much for your answer, puppy lover. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.